So we've got some more news about Metro Rivals New York following my last video. So Dovetail released a developer spotlight on the Train Sim World channel, and this one actually dives a bit deeper into how the game is being built, what tools they're using, and what all of this might mean going forward. So there is a lot in here that we didn't know before, and of course they go over some things that I covered from the FAQs, but just in more detail, and it gives us a much better idea of where things could be heading, not just for this Metro Rivals game, but for Dovetail in terms of TSW. So first, I want to talk about what is new. So they have confirmed that Metro Rivals is in the alpha stage right now, and that the team is working on balancing gameplay and pacing. Dovetail also talked about this new internal setup they've built called the Play Labs, and I've covered that very recently as well. And this whole thing is basically just an in-house testing space where outside players can try early builds and give feedback. It's the first time they've done that internally, and it is already helping them tweak things like the QTEs or quick time events and the flow of the gameplay. Now, speaking of quick time events, those are built right into the whole experience. So you're going to be handling vigilance checks, you're going to sound the horn for trackside workers, dip headlights for oncoming trains, and doing all of those things successfully will give you boosts that help you move faster and also finish the jobs more efficiently. The goal here with all of this is keeping players engaged, but also still rewarding good driving at the same time, because as we've already discussed, this is a very different experience from TSW. Think Need for Speed or Forza, as some of you have put it in the comments of my last video, which you're most likely spot on. They also explained more about how races work. So finishing first doesn't automatically make you the winner. You're going to be judged on how you drive overall, and that's going to include how smooth your stops are, how well you control your speed, how comfortable your passengers feel. It is going to be an arcade-based game, but it is going to keep a bit of the simulation at heart too. Some of those elements that we currently see in TSW, like the physics, for example. So they go into more detail in this second video too on customization. You will have the option to repaint trains, but it will go beyond that. You can slightly change the shape of them. You can swap out certain parts and personalize your avatar. We definitely need to see this type of customization come to TSW, because once you pick your player for your profile, you're kind of stuck with them forever unless you create a new profile. It would be so neat if we had more to work with in terms of that for TSW, but with this game, it seems they're going further there. So they really emphasize that everything in this game is cosmetic and can be earned through play or unlocked in the in-game store if you want to. So you can purchase things if you don't want to play and earn them and unlock them over time. I'm at least very happy that they've given us that option. I think hiding things and forcing people to pay for things that you can't get otherwise would be a little gross. I just hate that business model in video games. And as you progress through the game and as you beat Titans, you will also get unique cosmetics to show all of that off. So how does Metro Rivals compare to TSW? So the developers actually compared the two in a few ways. They explained how Lumen replaces baked lighting, something that has always been very tricky for TSW, especially in tunnels. So Metro Rivals doesn't need those heavy pre-calculations. It can do realistic underground lighting without the very long setup times that TSW deals with in the development for that. And Nanite also stood out a lot here because of what it could mean for performance. So it's going to let them use extremely detailed models without needing multiple versions for distance scaling. And basically the engine is going to do that scaling procedurally on its own. I think the tools itself are really neat. Definitely a major landmark for current gen game development. And that alone will solve the problem that has limited TSW for for years. Now for procedural generation, they're going to be using it to build cityscapes based on real data, complete with automatically placed buildings and stations, compared to the manual route building process in TSW. And that's exactly how they're going to be building over 100 miles of track, they said. That is crazy. Now what's neat about this procedural generation is they can still go into specific areas like stations, for example, and add artwork, and they talked a little bit about that too. So it isn't just really like a copy and paste of a station, but it just kind of makes most of the work easier, especially for areas that are essentially copy and paste that just have a little bit of variation. It's going to help that workflow immensely. So it's very clear to see that with these new tools in Unreal Engine 5 that we are going to be receiving a scale that just wouldn't have been possible with their old tools that they used for TSW. Now, something else we learned is that both TSW 6 and Metro Rivals are being developed in-house with some crossover between the teams. And Matt Peddleston mentioned that they've expanded both projects. So Metro Rivals is being used as a learning space for Unreal Engine 5, kind of like how Euro Fishing helped the team get used to Unreal Engine 4 before TSW came along. And I think that's one of the most interesting parts about this whole video. And we're definitely going to get into this a little more later on in this video, because I have a lot of questions with the teams and what's being dedicated to who, and are they pulling resources from the TSW team? This whole video is really just going to be about what does this mean for TSW way more than the last one did. I just have a lot of questions, and I've also seen a lot of folks on the forums and in the Discord kind of raising these points too, you know, like what if this is a major success? What does it mean for TSW? Now, all of this really does make you wonder what this kind of technology could do for a future train sim, and that's where all of my bigger questions start coming in. So they make it very clear here in this spotlight video that Metro Rivals is helping the team learn Unreal Engine 5, and that is a very, very good thing. I think it's honestly a very smart way to experiment with the whole, lighting and rendering, and also the multiplayer aspects without touching the core sim yet. And there's been so much talk about Unreal Engine 5 and TSW, and I think if they're going to experiment with that, it's best that they do it in a spin-off like Metro Rivals without attempting to touch TSW, because they could learn so much from this that could not only make that process possible for TSW, but maybe for a future train simulation game, maybe the one that comes after TSW, because I feel like we all know that that's likely gonna happen at some point. But what happens once they figured all of this out? It would likely be an entirely new project that's built from the ground up, which makes a lot of sense because they've said in order to introduce Unreal Engine 5 for TSW, they would basically have to rework a lot of the core systems and rebuild routes and all of that. And in my opinion, it just doesn't seem like something that's likely. It would be a really big process. The lighting, all of the geometry and materials, everything would need to be rebuilt, and that is a lot of work that would require a lot of time and resources, and it's probably why they haven't committed to that direction yet. And they kind of have doubled down on that recently, talking about still trying to learn and utilize the current tool set within the current version of Unreal Engine that they use for TSW. So one of the biggest questions is who this new game is even meant for. Metro Rivals clearly isn't built for the same people who play TSW. Now, in terms of realism and immersion, some people play TSW for relaxation or just for the fact that they're driving trains, and I think for those folks, this is going to be absolutely up their alley. But generally speaking, for those realism and immersion players that want accurate representations, or at least as close to real life as they can get in TSW, it's definitely aimed at a different crowd entirely, and that is fine, but I think it's a tough balance to strike. TSW already appeals to a smaller audience compared to other sim genres, and I think splitting that attention even further might be very risky for them. So I'm gonna say it definitely poses a major risk of being a big commercial failure. Now, for marketing, noticing them promoting Metro Rivals on the TSW channel, it makes sense from a business angle because Train Sim World is Dovetail's game, and there are train fans fans, so it would make sense to promote to that audience, but it just feels off to a lot of people, and I really couldn't agree more. I mean, we just received TSW6. We are still dealing with a very, very long list of bugs and issues, both new issues and some that have been lingering for many years. So to see a whole new game getting showcased and promoted on their main channel, given those issues with TSW and where we kind of are in terms of stability for the game, just really feels like bad timing, even if that wasn't the intent. So now I want to talk a little more about resources and priorities. This has been a big topic of discussion too. As I've just stated, TSW6 still has a lot of old issues hanging around, and players are very vocal about that, especially on the forum. So naturally, some worry that development focus will shift away from fixing what's already there. Even though Dovetail says both teams have expanded, there is still crossover within them. And let's say Metro Rivals performs very well. There's always the chance that resources start leaning more that way, and for people who've invested time and money into TSW, I can see how that could be frustrating. But I do think there's still potential upside here as well. Metro Rivals could actually help TSW in the long run. We have the Play Lab testing, which I just talked about, all of the new procedural systems and how they're handling multiplayer. That's something that's been highly requested for TSW. I definitely think that all of those lessons could end up improving how TSW is made in the future. Again, like I've mentioned, it doesn't seem like moving to Unreal Engine 5 for TSW is possible at this stage, but who knows? If they're able to learn these systems and find a way to make it work, it could potentially trickle down and make future updates stronger. And I've even seen folks mention the possibility of outsourcing to bring everything up to Unreal Engine 5. And yes, that is a major task that would require a lot of time and a lot of money. And would Dovetail actually invest in that? In my opinion, probably not, but it is a possibility. But I feel like maybe the more they learn about Unreal Engine 5 through Metro Rivals could make that more possible. And if it isn't possible and TSW doesn't and couldn't be brought up to Unreal Engine 5, I think that definitely poses the risk of yet another reset. And that's a very real fear for many players. We have been through this many times before. When Train Simulator Classic gave way to TSW, all of that content stayed behind and separate to TSC. People have spent hundreds of hours and a ton of money building their collection. So I just think that the idea of starting over again just doesn't really sit well. And even if we do get some sort of new game that replaces TSW in the future, even if Unreal Engine 5 offers better lighting and better performance, and it makes their entire workflow easier with creating content, I think the thought of losing layers and entire preserved collections from a player's perspective is very hard to accept. And if Dovetail ever creates a new train simulator in Unreal Engine 5 or Unreal Engine 6, if it happens to be out at the time, who knows? I think that's the part that will sting the most. I'm all here for new technology. I will welcome it in with open arms, but it's just the content reset from the consumer's perspective and the idea of leaving all of that progress behind that is just really hard for a lot of players, and I fully, wholeheartedly agree. Whether you think Metro Rivals looks amazing or whether you think it's complete hot garbage is up to you, and both are completely valid opinions. You're allowed to feel how you feel. This game is clearly meant for a very more niche demographic, more niche than even TSW is, but Dovetail is experimenting with growing and learning what works before jumping into anything bigger, and I think that is very, very important. But after so many changes over the years, I get why people are just sick and tired. We have seen these resets so many times. We've rebuilt our collections and no one really wants to do that again. And I get you're not actually going to lose your game. You're not going to lose your DLC. If a new train simulator game comes out, I still have TSC with all the DLC that I bought. I still have TSW 5 with all the DLC that I bought. It's just the fact that we would be starting over again and we would have a completely different experience at the cost of having better lighting gaming and graphics. I definitely feel like it is going to happen though at some point. I'm definitely curious on what you guys think on all of this, with all of these new details and all of these conversations that are happening online with the future of TSW or what could possibly come after, and just overall what you think about Metro Rivals. Does it feel like a very promising step forward? Does it make you more nervous about where TSW is heading in the long term? Definitely share all of your thoughts down below, and as always, thank you guys so much for watching. Take care and happy rail simming.